Mastering electronic dance music.
Hey, welcome to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro, and today I'm going to be covering the first video in our series introducing mixing, and that the topic will be mixing an art or a science. If you have not watched my first 5 videos, which are introducing Logic Pro X, then I suggest you watch those if you're new to Logic. If you are not new to Logic and you've used it before, then those videos are slightly helpful, but they're not stuff that you need to know. You'll just kind of pick it up along the way, and you'll see me doing stuff and you'll just catch on. So, but if you've never used Logic before, I suggest you watch those videos. Now, without further ado, we'll get into the content of this video. So now the question I proposed was, is mixing an art or a science? I'm not going to do too much to show you. I just have Logic open because I had it open when I was recording the other video. But essentially, here, let me bring up notes. That way I could do bullet points here. That'll kind of help you. Is mixing an art or a science? I would say it's a little bit of both. Now that sounds like a middle ground thing. It is a middle ground thing, but I'm pretty much sure that that's the case because, first of all, you can have a good mix and a bad mix. Period. Anyway, so what this means is there is a little bit of science to it. If you can have a good mix and a bad mix, then that means that there is objectively a point to where a mix does not sound good. I'm not talking about a song. I'm talking about a mix. Mixes are different from songs. Mixing is getting the tracks, throwing them together, and getting them to blend. So that's like, assume you already have the song all written, but the kick drum kind of sounds like it's like stepping on top of everybody. It's like kicking everybody. And you want to try to balance that out. That's mixing. So that's what mixing is. You can have a good mix and you can have a bad mix. That pretty much means that there is good, there is bad, there is wrong, there is right. But at the same time, there we go. You can have 2 good mixes that are completely different. And I've seen this a couple times. It's not too often that that people that are listening to the music will care which one it is, but essentially you could mix things differently. You could put a different reverb on and it'll give it a different sort of feel to the song, but they could both sound amazing and you cannot compare them because they both are, over the top. Now, that means that there's an art to it, because if there's not, if you could get a good mix in more than one way, that means it's not a science. There is not just one route to the end. That said, where's the balance? Well, first of all, mixing is definitely an art because you cannot have computers that mix a song. You can have it to some degree. They can do basic stuff, but you can't really get 50 tracks of audio, throw them into a computer and say, mix these tracks. It just won't really know what to do. So that means that you can't really, using scientific methods or mathematical ways, you cannot really mix a song. You have to listen to the audio and make judgment calls as to what you should change. So long story short, you need to deal with not just what the general guidelines are, but what sounds right. And that basically means one thing. Don't trust your head, trust your ears. And that is one thing you are going to have to learn to deal with. It's pretty painful when you want to do something and you try to do something and it doesn't sound right. I have done that so many times. It's really tough going through working out and figuring out, how to get it right when what you normally do or what you're supposed to do theoretically doesn't end up working and getting it to sound right. So it's kind of tough in that respect. You can't just like follow a bunch of guidelines. Like for instance, there's one question that I've heard so many times: how do I mix vocals? Vocals are generally speaking, you could let me pull up an EQ. But generally speaking, people say, boost the highs a little bit and cut the lows. Yeah, that's true. That's because that's kind of what's expected to some degree. But at the same time, if you cut out too much lows, then the voice sounds thin. If you boost the highs too much, then the voice sounds really sharp. If you cut out the highs, the voice sounds dead. If you remove the amount of cuts you've done on the lows, then it sounds all muddy and disgusting. So, you know, there's a balance somewhere, and you need to find that with your ears. And with vocals, it's even more delicate because you'll find in the mid ranges, that's somewhere around here, there will be somewhere that when you boost it, the vocals just sound beautiful. Or if you cut a certain area, the vocals will sound beautiful. Now, where is that? I will tell you right now, no one knows unless they listen to the vocals. So you can't really, you know, someone say, oh, I got a female vocal and she's got a pretty high voice. And so how do I mix this? They'll be like, I have no idea. Like, can I hear it? And not only do they have to hear the vocals, but they have to hear the rest of the mix too. So you can't separate one track and just expect to throw an EQ on it, do this right stuff with the EQ, and then throw a compressor and do the right stuff with the compressor, and expect it to come out right when you're done. No, you have to tweak stuff while listening to it because your ears are your best tool. Now, I was planning on talking about volume as the biggest tool in Logic, but then I kind of remembered that your ears, when working with audio, your ears are the best tool. Second best well, actually, you know what? I won't say which one's best. I'll just go through. I am pretty much going to be covering. Let me check my list really quick here. Yeah, I'm gonna be covering the first 3 components of mixing. I'm going to be covering. They're in the order of importance, and pretty much I'm going to be the first one's going to be easiest, second one's going to be a little bit harder, and the third one's going to be even harder. Now that said, they're not that hard. It's kind of interesting how when you start from the beginning, it's easy and it's probably the most important. And as you get farther along the line, things get more complicated and they're less important. So if you go back to the root of it all, you're listening through your ears. So they're the most important. Trust your ears. And some people say you can't entirely trust your ears. That is true because you're not actually listening to the source. You're listening through your speakers, and your speakers change how it actually sounds. But beside that, just listen to your ears. Trust them when they talk to you, and you'll get the idea of what's going on, what you need to change, and everything like that. So is mixing an art or a science? It's a bit of both. You can't really say that it's a science because there's stuff that that you can't figure out by just objectively looking at it. You kind of have to listen to it artistically and subjectively and figure out how you're going to change it. And it's not entirely an art because there is stuff that you could do wrong. There is stuff that it'll just sound terrible if you do it no matter what. And now there are ways to take advantage of that and get something to sound terrible and then make it sound even more terrible, and then you'll end up getting something completely different, which might be what you were looking for. But yeah, that said, it's not entirely an art because there is a little bit of science behind it. You have to know what a compressor is doing in order to use it. And there could be stuff going on in the background that you don't really know what's going on because you don't know about compressors, and you end up kicking yourself in the butt because you're I don't know, let's say you're cutting out transients because you're compressing too much. And now that sounds complicated. It kind of is. The concept behind that isn't that easy. but essentially what it means is you lose a little bit of detail when compressing. And if you're over compressing and it sounds pretty good, and you don't realize you're losing that detail, then you could kind of lose some of that. So a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, you could get stuff wrong. There's stuff you could do that won't sound great if you don't know the general guidelines for mixing. You pick up those general guidelines. People will tell you some general guidelines, but remember, rules are made to be broken. And if you keep that in mind, then you see how mixing is an art, and you know all those famous artists out there when it comes to music and actual traditional art, that they broke rules. Picasso broke rules. He's famous. Yeah. And Beethoven broke rules. He's famous. So keep that in mind. It's not entirely a science, not entirely an art. It's a little bit of both. And that's it for this video. And the next video I will be covering volume and pan. Sounds relatively simple. It is very simple, but it's actually very important too, and you'll see why in the next video, so stay tuned. In the meantime, remember to subscribe, comment, and like this video, and thank you for watching.